Hi, I'm Niall Bodkin from the E-Commerce Association of Ireland. This month we're talking about PSD2 and what it means to online retailers. I'm here in the beautiful City Hall in Dublin City Centre, and I'm joined by David Jones today from MasterCard. Hey David, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So David, can you explain what exactly is Strong Customer Authentication, or SCA?
Well, so Strong Customer Authentication is based upon some specifications that are written as part of PSD2. So PSD2 is banking regulation that really focuses on two main areas. One is around open banking and what that involves and how that should work. And the other is very much around strong customer authentication, which is really about preventing fraud, particularly in e-commerce. And so what it requires is when you do a transaction in an e-commerce environment, the consumer has to authenticate themselves using 2 out of 3 things. So either something they are, something they have, or something they know.
And David, why is this issue so important to Irish retailers?
It's a crucial issue for retailers throughout the European Economic Area, in fact. So it will become law on the 14th of September. We could talk another time maybe about what that will really mean, because there will be some delays in the way it's enforced. But effectively from that date, or when it's enforced, the issuing bank will be forced to decline transactions that don't meet the obligations of SCA. So from a retailer's point of view, they have to do this, firstly, otherwise they will actually suffer declined transactions and lost sales. But I think given that they have to do it, they should be looking at it in a positive light. How can I do this really well? How can I offer a really great customer experience? How can I be better than my competitors at doing this? And how can I kind of maximize those conversions from basket to actual sale? So yeah, it's a really, really crucial issue faced by retailers throughout Europe. And as well, the other thing to think about is that many of the largest e-commerce retailers in Europe are not based in Ireland necessarily, but have huge business presence in Ireland. And those guys are all over this, and they're ready to do this, and they're ready to do this really effectively. So for local Irish retailers, you're going to need to do this well to stay in the game, to compete, to offer a great customer experience, and to carry on making sales.
In an e-commerce scenario, how is SCA, or Strong Customer Authentication, applied? Okay,
so primarily at the moment, what we think will happen is there is a common protocol, sorry to use such terms, but a common protocol called 3D Secure, which effectively allows the retailer to talk to the issuing bank, to ask the issuing bank to authenticate this cardholder, right? And so that is common whether it's a MasterCard or a Visa or an Amex or in fact other payment schemes also. So that allows, and cardholders in Ireland will be kind of comfortable and experienced with seeing that. They'll see that pop-up window that says, you know, please enter a passcode or whatever, and that will already happen often today. It's going to happen more. And what's going to change a little bit is, in the past, the cardholder could have simply put in what we call a static password. So perhaps something even as simple as, you know, mother's maiden name or something like that, which, you know, isn't very secure actually. So the requirements on the issuer to have a much more secure and robust authentication kind of method means that now the cardholder will have to do something slightly different. So in the short term, we think that will take the form of a one-time passcode sent to the cardholder via an SMS as the predominant way it will happen in the short term. Longer term, we think some type of biometric authentication in a banking app is much more likely. So the prompt from the retailer's website will effectively send a push notification to the cardholder's phone. They'll open their phone, they'll do a face or a thumb or something like that, and that will authenticate the transaction. So I think we should be cognizant of the fact that it already happens today, so it's not like a brand new thing for cardholders, but they'll see more of it, and they'll be asked to do things in slightly different ways, which over time will be a good thing. It will be better. In the short term, it will maybe take some getting used to.
Are there any exceptions to SCA?
Yes. So firstly, the RTS the regulatory technical specifications. Sorry, we live in three-letter acronym land here. But, so firstly, they define the scope of what it has to be subject to SCA. And so there are a couple of things that are out of scope that are important. Firstly, so mail order and telephone order transactions are out of scope. Yeah. So if you have a business where cardholders are calling and giving you their card details over the phone, that's out of scope for now. And I think that's important to reflect that it's not the most secure way of making a payment. And over time, I think they will need to find a way of addressing that too. But for now, it's out of scope because technically it's very difficult. The other crucial thing that's out of scope is what we call a merchant-initiated transaction. So that really is where you would have your card on file with a merchant and have a pre-existing mandate for that merchant to take money from your card on a regular basis. Think about a phone bill, a gym subscription, a utility bill, a magazine subscription, that type of thing. So that is out of scope, albeit that there are still some things that a retailer would need to do to flag the fact that it's a merchant-initiated transaction so the issuer knows. So there's some work to be done, but it's out of scope. The cardholder isn't required to do the authentication every time. So in addition to the transactions that are out of scope, there are also some exemptions that can be applied. These exemptions can be applied by either the acquirer, who has the legal obligations here on behalf of the retailer, and also by the issuing bank. Now, the issuing bank in the end always has the final say, because it's their customer and they're keeping account and they've got a broader view of that customer activity. So that's important. But there are exemptions that the retailer can apply themselves. Firstly, there's a low value payment exemption. So transactions of less than 30 euros can be exempted from SCA up to a maximum of 5 of those transactions. So if you're a low value retailer, you can try to take advantage of that, but be aware if the issuer is keeping the count, and if that happens to be the 5th one, it's going to be declined, so you may want to seek an authentication. The other exemption that the retailers can use is what we call the transaction risk analysis exemption. And so that's where they can score the transactions in real time, and if they believe that those transactions are low risk, they can again put them through as subject to that exemption, and therefore the issuer doesn't need to step up. The retailer would be owning the liability in that case too. I think what's important though is all of these exemptions, the best way to manage these exemptions is through the authentication message. So back to that common protocol 3D Secure that we talked about. If you are a retailer and you want to exempt a transaction from SCA, you should still send an authentication request to the issuer, and there will be values in that request that you can flag that you want it to be subject to this exemption. And then when the issuer receives that message, they know what to do and they can choose the right course. And the issuing banks typically won't step up the cardholder unless they need to. And so the cardholder's experience in those cases will be similar again to what many of the cardholders will see today, which would be a secure code window popping up and then going away and then the transaction completing. So good customer experience. So there are some exceptions. They need to be thought through in terms of how you use them. They won't work for every retailer in every scenario, and retailers should really be speaking to their partners, their gateway provider and their acquirer, to understand the best way for them to use exemptions for their business.
And finally, David, can you give us any tips for Irish retailers facing PSD2 and SCA?
Okay, so I think the key thing that they have to keep in mind is this is coming. We've seen the regulators offer some delays in terms of enforcement, and it looks like that, in the UK at least, that's going to be an 18-month delay. The Irish regulator hasn't said exactly what that's going to look like, but what looks likely is there's going to be an 18-month delay in enforcement throughout the EEA. Don't treat that as a time to do nothing. Treat that as a time to act. You need to go as fast as you can with this in terms of deploying solutions and then testing those solutions. You'll have different channels, you'll have different user experiences. You need to test that. You need to see what's going to work well with customers, what communications are going to work well with customers. You've now actually got this window in which you can actually test, learn, and then deploy what works. And you know, my tip would be take advantage of that. Okay, don't take your foot off the gas. This is going to be a business critical activity, but maybe enjoy Christmas trading without having to do it.
No, that's really good advice. Thank you, David. So as I say, this month there's going to be more on PSD2. You can find these videos and more on www.psd2ready.ie, the ECAI website, ecai.ie, and now on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, please like. Thank you, David.